Welcome to another episode of TLGMMA podcast number 11 with JT and Derrick. How you doing, JT? How you doing, Derrick? I guess I shouldn't say both of you guys. Let's start. How you doing, JT?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm a little tired, but I'm okay.
Alright. I feel the same. Tired is just one of those things that you gotta be careful telling yourself too much, right? Are you really tired? I mean, you are really tired. You gotta listen to yourself and sleep. But I noticed that I've tried not to tell myself that I'm tired of things, but if I'm actually really sleepy and tired, well then yeah, you make sure you get some fucking sleep.
Yeah.
How you doing, Derrick?
Feeling pretty good, man. It's Tuesday. Feels like it's a long week.
Yeah, tell me about it. It definitely feels like it's been a long week. Tuesday, long week already. We'll talk about it's a little Truth Tuesday today. Let's get some deep talks. Today we're going to talk about dealing with death and maybe how to come back from heartache. Whether that be from loss of somebody from death or other reasons. I feel like that's really what's going on when it comes to dealing with death. Pain of the heart. Good friend of mine passed away recently. Martial arts brother, if you will, Tim Lane. May he rest in peace. And maybe we'll go into even talking about suicide. Unfortunately, that is what it sounded like happened. And part of me didn't even want to talk about this. Part of me was trying to deny and repress my feelings and say, oh, I didn't know him that well. I wasn't even living in there. His wife and other people should be, they're going to have their, they have more feelings and, they're more heartbroken than me. Just all these reasons that I was trying to basically be tough and sort of, block it all out. And I realized it was like creating like a little bit of numbness. And I realized that it was important just to talk about it. Maybe not talk about too much because I do know some of Tim's personal details in life because I had the privilege of helping him get established sort of in Vegas when he first moved out there. I was sort of the first fighter he worked with at Extreme Couture. And I remember at the time I didn't want to, I believe that nothing should be for free. And I couldn't afford to pay him necessarily for all the training that I wanted to do with him as far as pad session, like as how many hours we were going to work together. But we made a deal that I basically said, anytime you want to come over and eat, and anytime you want to come over and smoke, like my door's open, and you're never going to go hungry while you're in Vegas. You're always going to have a roof over your head. And if you need some, good old medicine to help yourself heal, then I got you, bro. And so, we had that agreement and spent a lot of hours in the gym doing pad sessions and a lot of nights hanging out on the couch, recovering, eating good food. And one of the things I'll never forget about Tim was, for me in my life, I know people that are dealing with mental health and stuff, when we, not only mental health, but also head trauma. Tim actually, one of his last posts on Instagram mentioned that he was getting some work done at one of the brain institutes there in Vegas, and he learned that he had a skull fracture at 2 years old.
Damn.
So, yeah, head trauma and all this stuff. When it comes to head trauma, we don't sleep a lot. So, when we talk about, being tired and not sleeping, I know all about it. I didn't really sleep that much. I haven't been sleeping that much ever since hearing about Tim's passing, but it is what it is. And my point, my point was Tim would come over and, he would eat some good food and have a little cannabis, and then he would get so comfortable he'd sit on the couch and he'd relax and he'd fall asleep. And that to me is a sign of somebody being happy and safe and comfortable. And when we're not safe and comfortable and feeling good, shit, we ain't sleeping. I ain't sleeping. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like fuck this motherfucker. I ain't sleeping in this motherfucker's house. Who's this guy? So that to me, I feel like is how I was there to be able to be there for Tim and support Tim when I could be there. And I was always reaching out to him as much as I could, and I wish at the end of the day, I could reach out to him and, try to keep him here to prevent other people from suffering. But at the end of the day, I'm starting to learn that learning to love without attachment, or learning to love with healthy attachment, is what I've learned through all this pandemic stuff. I don't want to compare the things that I lost that are material things to human souls, so I'm not even going to mention the things that I lost. But throughout my life, I've dealt with people passing, from friends, fathers of cancer, early on that we didn't expect, to even kids I went to high school with that committed suicide. So unfortunately, this is something that I have some personal relationships with. It's way too close to home for me. I've even had some thoughts myself and recognized even some sort of quote-unquote suicidal habits, that are really, when you become really careless and really reckless and you really do not care about what happens to you, that is sort of not a good place to be, when you're really numb and you're just like, I don't give a fuck, I'm doing this because it's going to make me happy in this moment, I don't give a fuck what happens later. So be very careful. If you want to listen to the podcast about unhealthy relationships, you can hear more deep dive into some of that stuff. But yeah, letting Tim be comfortable in my house, that was the best I could do for him, and learning to not be selfish and get mad at him for his actions and doing what he decided to do. I think that's the most important thing that we as individuals that are connected to people that have taken their own life can do. We as individuals that are just dealing with death and people passing away, I think regret is the hardest thing to live with, and we give ourselves a lot of guilt and a lot of shame around the things that we have regretted. And when people pass away, we don't have another chance to go back there, and then that's when the regret and the shame and guilt can start to build, because those people are completely gone. And they're not completely gone, I shouldn't say that. If you believe in prayer, if you believe in, some quote-unquote woo-woo spiritual things in the universal law that everything truly is connected, then one might argue that there is no death. It is just a transition and a change, and that everyone that passes is just going into a different realm, into a breaking down into different particles, if you will, and that their spirit is going to circle back around. I've heard it can take up to 8 lifetimes to get into a human body again. So if you're out there dealing with life and struggling and thinking you're just going to hit the reset button and start it over, it might be a few lifetimes before you get back to a human condition. So be careful, Do you want to be a fly? Do you want to, be a dog, a tree? Just to bring the lightheartedness back to this serious conversation. But that's the truth of it all. If you believe, in that type of stuff. Or if you're just super, super scientific and material and you just believe they're gone, then guess what? All the regret, all the shame, all the guilt, it's time to use that with the people around you and take action on those things that you have or feel regret for, right? Now that's where you have unhealthy attachment, and we get unhealthy attachment to those relationships, and we just focus on the fact that we cannot do this with that person anymore because they're gone, etc., etc., etc. Then we miss out on the opportunity on connecting with all the other people around us that are still here, and when then that person passes that's still here, we're going to have regret around that person, and then this regret cycle is going to keep building. So you got to make sure you don't get too stuck into the pain, and try to find a way, a community, a system, whether it's talking about it, moving about it. I've had some smokes about it. I've ate some food about it. I've thought about memories of Tim about it. Had a fire outside about it. Now we're talking about it on the podcast. And so enough of my rant, I guess, about what I have going on with me, and hope anybody out there dealing with it, with Tim stuff or any other stuff. I know that right now, me personally, I know more people that have committed suicide during this pandemic than that have actually died of COVID.
Damn.
So that, to me, I don't know about you guys, JT and Derrick, but that to me is what is really frustrating about what's going on in the world and how the news and the media has got you so focused on all this bullshit that's creating divide amongst families. I don't want to go too much into my family, but let's just say there's people in my family that don't feel comfortable around people that are unvaccinated. Well, the news is out. Natural immunity is better. So is what it is. You can argue the science all you want and keep yourself divided and keep the regret train going, or we can get back to love, stay connected, believe in Mother Nature. Worst case scenario, we'll all be connected, and hey, if we all pass away from COVID because we're all so close, like we're not supposed to be, well then at least we're all passing away together in a connected way, and we'll all hopefully circle back around and come back, through the universal cycles and stay connected again. Before we got this podcast rolling, Derrick was mentioning something in regards to dealing with death himself. I don't know if you want to bring any of that up or talk about any of that, or if you guys want to share anything or have any questions or thoughts that came up based on my long-ass rant there.
Yeah, definitely. I think, well, thank you for sharing your rant. But I think in perspective, I don't see it as a rant per se, but I see this is the healthy, or this is how someone deals and grieves
process,
with the process of going through a death, right? Like, you prayed, you celebrated, you had a fire ceremony, and you did all the things that you do that are healing to your soul, and also you addressed your ego and stuff like that.
I'm still addressing the ego, honestly. It comes and goes. Some tears have come up, and I've learned, I've recognized I'm holding back sometimes, but I think it's, granted, you don't want to, crying on the lady at the fucking grocery store, but there's a time and a place to, I guess, hold them back a little bit, but sometimes you gotta let them out. So it's like hold them back at the check stand, but then get in the car. Sometimes you just gotta let that shit out before you get on the road, because next thing you know, you're cussing somebody out in traffic, but it's just because you didn't let those tears out.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I think, dude, for myself, letting tears out is a challenging thing. That's probably one thing that I'm trying to work on. In certain situations and cases and
stuff. I'll take a little responsibility. I remember shutting down your tears one time, and I didn't really mean to shut down your tears, but I questioned your tears. Do you remember what the time I'm talking about?
No.
It was the first time that you lost when you were that I was coaching you in MMA.
To Hector Sandoval, the Conquer fight.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
And you started to, so let's back up a little bit. I'm going to give a little lay it out for everybody. So I was coaching Derrick, and he had a big fight coming up, and we worked hard for it. It was a big local event in front of his friends and family against a worthy opponent, etc., etc. Fight, I dare say, didn't go Derrick's way. He lost, right? But he didn't get finished. It wasn't anything to me that was super embarrassing. And then I get in the cage, and I can just see him just start breaking down, crying, and more than anything, it was that he was dropping his head, and so from just a physical standpoint, I'm like, pick your head up. I'm like, why are you crying? And he's just looking at me kind of looking shocked, actually. I remember he went from tears, sad face, to just what the fuck? I don't know. I was like,
why am I crying?
And sometimes that's what we need. It's called a pattern interrupt. Sometimes we need someone to interrupt our fucked up pattern, or whatever it is to bring us out of it, snap us out of it. And I did it, and I figured out, I didn't think about it. I did it in a healthy way. I was questioned it, versus telling him what he should or shouldn't be doing. Stop crying like a bitch. Why you crying like a bitch or whatever. No, I'm just, why are you crying, right? Why? Perfectly good question to ask, right? Not judging, not telling what to do. Anyway, why are you crying? He goes, well, I let my friends and family, I let my family down. I think that's what you said, and I'm like, I get it. And I'm like, bro, you didn't let nobody down. The only person you let down was yourself.
Yeah.
I'm like, everyone that loves you right now, they're still proud of you.
Yeah.
Everyone else, fuck them. And when I didn't say that there, but what I did say that, I said everyone that loves you is proud of you. Don't worry about that. Only person you let down was yourself. And then what I did say, I said, I'm like, I look at everybody out there. I'm like, look at us in here. I'm like, we're the ones in here in the cage. They're the ones out there watching. Like, don't worry about what the fuck they think. You know, like, yeah, it's easy to judge out there, but look how many of them are out there. And look how many few are in here. You know what I'm saying? And that's the hard thing when you're, you know, king of the hill or whatever you want to call it, champion, all that shit. You know, it's a good mentality to have. It can make you accomplish lots of things, but then it can hurt you because you lose, and then, you know, you feel like the tablecloth just ripped off the table, and all the dishes and all the food go with it. You know, it wasn't a smooth pull. You know what I'm saying? It's like all the feast is gone. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But you know, that's just the tide of life. So, how have you been with those tears since then, and or are there things that you notice happen, like when you feel that you might want to cry, what happens? Like, if you can remember the last time that maybe you thought about wanting to cry, or thought, why am I not crying, or whatever.
Yeah, it's definitely my ego, and then just conditioning of like, nah, boys aren't supposed to cry, or don't be a bitch, don't fucking cry.
So can you remember the last time that you heard that? I guess other than me.
Yeah, just when I was a kid, like getting a spanking. Boom, boy, I wish you would cry.
So you got spanked. So you get spanked for crying.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember. I'll never forget.
You get punted. You get in trouble.
I'll never forget watching one of the coaches back in the day. It was gym, a little bit dysfunctional situation. I remember watching my friend's kid. He was making him spar boxing, and the kid's crying when he's putting the headgear on. And he's like, I was like, oh my god, like this. And he's like, this is what my dad did to me. Like, fuck this shit. You know, he's got to learn somehow, right? You know, that good old warrior mentality. Suck it up, right? And I'm like, bro, he's crying before he even starts. And then he's just telling him like, hey, if you cry, I'm gonna give you something to cry about when you get home. Like, yeah, like, so it's same mentality, right? And so it's a gift and a curse. True story. That kid turned me into a tough ass, hard ass, and turned into be a handful for that parent. So be careful. Be careful. It could bite you in your ass, you know. So yeah, what's the story around, like, what do you like? This is the deeper meaning, right? So the like primary story you have is, you know, you're not supposed to cry. If you cry, you're gonna get your ass whipped more, right? Mm-hmm. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you that if, like,
I think
like that storyline? Go ahead.
I think the root issue was as a kid. Like, I remember like being like in the 4th, 5th, 6th grade. That age group, like, I would cry a lot, and like someone would talk shit to me, and then I would cry, like, just get my feelings starting to be sensitive, and then it got to the point where, like, I just told myself, like, I'm tired of people fucking making fun of me, and I'm just gonna stop fucking crying, and I'm just gonna put a stone face and, like, in a harder exterior, and then now I'm gonna start fighting back and stuff like that. I think that was like...
So crying then meant what? Crying meant weak. That you were weak, and that what? You were going to get picked on?
Getting picked on. I was weak. Sensitive. Oh, then Derrick was a crybaby and stuff like that.
So this is true, and this is where, you know, maybe that learning to manage our tears and manage our emotions can be a good thing, right? When we're in the battlefield of life, or as kids are in the battlefield of testing grounds, right, on the playground, in sports, etc., you know, you do, unfortunately, have to learn to manage your physical, mental, emotional, sort of spiritual toughness. And that's something that comes with time and you know, based on the conditioning hopefully it comes with healthy conditioning, right? Now, it sounds like your dad never taught you that there's a place to cry, right?
No.
Right? So we just get taught, no, you don't cry. Versus, okay, there's a time to not cry and there's a time to cry, right? And I guess that's where I have the gift of my dad not being around growing up. So I got raised by a bunch of women. I guess crying was allowed, but at the same time, it wasn't, because I didn't see my mom cry ever growing up, to be honest. She was tough as nails. And so similarly, I think being in the middle of three brothers, yeah, you learn to not cry and not react, because reacting and crying equals getting picked on and or bullied even more. Mm-hmm. So if I just stop crying, stop reacting, then hey, I'm impenetrable, right?
But then we're numb.
Yeah, and so that's and that's the problem. We become numb, right? So
shit.
You can become numb from substances and foods like alcohol and drugs, or when you're younger even, you can literally become mentally numb, where you tap out, you dissociate, and you just, and that is a negative thing. It can be good if we're really trying to get through life or death, right? Life or death situation, traumatic situation as a kid, we naturally dissociate. And dissociation is when you sort of, from a layman's perspective, is when your soul kind of jumps out of your body, and you basically just see the room from like watching a movie, right? Like an out of body
third person.
Yeah, like an out of body experience, right? And I don't know if you can ever remember any crazy situations growing up where it kind of like felt like that, but for me that happened a bunch of times. And at the same time, it can be used as a curse. I mean, not curse. It can be used as a gift. Sometimes we can detach from what's going on. It can get us in trouble. But sometimes we have to detach from what's going on, because if we get too caught up in our emotions and our ego and all of that, it may lead to worse things happening. So like Jocko talks about all the time is detachment, right? You gotta learn to detach from the situation, figure out, assess what's going on, and prioritize and then execute, and take the next first step. So I guess to take all this back to healing and letting those tears flow, you gotta prioritize and execute. If you're dealing with death and grieving, what do you feel is the next thing to do? Do you need to go purge and get those tears out and get those feelings out? Schedule a time with a group or a place or people or a thing, and or create some rituals. Some rituals that I know sort of that are holistic and healing. I didn't do this yet with Tim. That's what I realized I maybe need to do. Need to find like an item or something that that I could potentially burn as like a releasing and letting go, a healthy attachment. You can burn some things, you can bury the things, you can set them off at sea. And these are different ways to do that.
That's right.
Yeah, you don't necessarily it doesn't have to be a burning thing, right? But if that's you, right? If you're a water person, yeah, go out to the water, right? You want to bury it, bury something next to a tree. That's something that people did for years. They bury bodies on the property and a tree growing next to it and all that stuff. And unfortunately, the way the world is and the way everything is full of toxins, our bodies are so toxic these days. They're not really great for the ground, So,
damn,
yeah.
It's not. So it's not all about just pouring a little liquor for the homies.
Well, so no, yes, it is. It could be. No, it could be. Right. So that's it's sacrifice. That's pouring something out. Now I dare say that's burying something, right? You're just pouring it on the ground. It's gonna seep into the ground. But we could take it a little deeper, right? Maybe we take a whole bottle, fucking bury that whole bottle. You know what I'm saying? Or people do it unhealthily and they bury that fucking bottle in themselves.
They get to the bottom of that bottle.
Yeah. So yeah, we got to be careful. When it comes to healing and consuming things, it can open us up. Psychedelics and other things, they can open us up for all the types of energies. Alcohol, I think, definitely can be dark energy. You got to be careful with the spirits. Cannabis, psychedelic, it can also open you up for light and dark energy. So you just got to be careful, the set and setting in which you use it. I heard this one time when it comes to using things, and I have a personal experience, I guess, and I'll share that story. It was after the Tony Robbins event. But yeah, it's saying that don't use alcohol to have a good time. use alcohol to have a better time. And so maybe not use, like, I don't really drink alcohol anymore, but I try to use that saying for all types of things. And my personal experience, like with Tony Robbins' event, he always talks about like getting into a peak state or whatever. And so I was fortunate enough to go to Tony Robbins' event, and then after Tony Robbins' event, I hadn't smoked for like 4 days at Tony Robbins' event. I was like fasting, drinking fat coffee, bulletproof coffee or whatever, just straight focus. I didn't take one bathroom break during, the sessions, like until there was like a lunch break. Like I made sure I didn't miss one fucking second of it. Like I was
You were tapped in.
Yeah, bro, I was tapped in, like I was making sure I didn't miss none of it. My mom was there. She's like, I'll go to the bathroom. I'll be back. I'm like, okay, whatever. It was straight tapped in, right? But to me, it worked, Tony Robbins said if you go all in, you're going to get the benefits. I went all in, I got the benefits. I saw some of the negative sides of his stuff as well, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm talking about the positive side, right? So I was there. I was focused for 4 days. While we're doing all this clapping, jumping, hooping, and hollering, my neck and my shoulder and things were not as strong in the shape as they are now. And my shit was locking up. It was not feeling good. It was not fun. Part of me is like, man, fuck this bullshit. And I'm like, hey, man, you said you gotta go all out. All right. I've been through worse, like, it was time to be tough, suck up those tears, right? It's time to be tough. Suck it up right then. But then when I got home, it was time to lick my wounds. It was time to heal and cry about it, whatever. And I rolled up some good weed, and I'm like, man, should I just quit and not smoke right now? I'm like on a roll or whatever, like got all these people in my past that used to try to convince me I'm an addict or whatever, and I'm like, no. I'm like, I just have to smoke when I'm in a peak state, right? I gotta smoke to have a better time, not smoke to have a good time. I can't try to fix things with smoke. I can't try to fix things with substance.
Yeah.
Right? I've got to holistically understand how to get myself into a good place. And so for me, I learned that I need water and good food before I need cannabis. I need good water and good food to help my muscles and my body heal. And then if I want to, while I'm feeling good and nourished, then I want to add a little bit of cannabis on top of that, then okay, no problem, right? But if I'm just stressed out and tired and sore and hurting, I can't expect weed to fix all my pain and all my soreness, So for me, that's what I think you got to do when it comes to healing, dealing with death. If you're going to consume some stuff, try to have some talking with some people first. And, if you have to, do it all together, right? That's something I'll admit for myself. Back in the day when I didn't really want to do things, sometimes I'd have to smoke just to get myself to do shit. I'm like, man, I really don't want to fucking go do this shit. You know what? I am going to smoke to have a better time. Right? I'm going to I guess it wouldn't be to have a good time. It would be to have a better time. So actually, that was actually correct there. And the specific thing I'm thinking of is actually these long-winded periods of having to sign autographs with fans. Now, this is nothing personal against fans. I love fans. But for me, I got fucking like ADD, and like sitting still for that long is so taxing on my fucking my soul. I'm like, I want to move and be free. I want to run. I love the fans. I love like signing autographs and meeting people that actually thought I was fucking cool. Like from this little 1 square mile town in Albany. Like who gives a fuck about me? Like, man, these people actually, oh man, you think I'm cool? All these stories you're telling on my phone. I'm like, wow. Like, but to get me there, sometimes I'd have to smoke a little bit. I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to be standing around for how many hours? Like, holy shit, like there's not even good food there, like all these negative things I'm allowing myself to think. I'm like, nah, man, I'm just gonna smoke. I'll get there. I'll be fine. Right? So that's what I would do. I'd smoke. I'd get there. And then, hours pass. The weed fades away. And yeah, it'd be cool to be able to take a smoke break, but I wasn't always able to do that. And then the connecting, like I said, the connecting with people, it made it worth it, And that for me, when it comes to healing and dealing with death, unfortunately, I think it's we're talking about polarities. The hard part is dealing with that death and that loss and feeling, like so separate and gone from that person. But if we can find people to connect with and heal and get through it together, then that maybe can be the light, the beauty, the yang to the yin, if you will, to get people to come together and to heal together and have some connection around it. And especially when it comes to things like suicide, if we can come together and create healing and create more connection, then hopefully we can keep more people on this planet. Because to me, the biggest, worst disease in the world is the one that allows people to believe that this world would be better off without them.
Damn.
And that, I think, is what most people know as suicide. And it's something that I've been interested in, I guess, for a long time, because I, growing up, kind of like Tim Lane. He had, at 2, he had a skull fracture. And at 2, I had a vascular ring surgery. They cut through my ribs, cut next to my heart. And, what was I just thinking about? Construction in the background got me distracted.
Suicide.
Oh, yeah. Suicide and connection. That's what I think the positive side of that is, Unfortunately, it's super painful. People deciding to do what they do. And I think if we can somehow get connected and create more healing for other people, that can be the positive side of it. When it comes to like looking at the yin and yang symbol, the dark is the yin, and if the dark yin energy, that's what people are doing when they're doing things like fighting and martial arts. People don't realize it. Although there is a lot of yang, there's a seed of that yang in the yin, right? When you look at the yin and yang symbol, there's a little bit of that white in the darkness, and that is the people, doing a little bit of the technique, finding that rhythm. That's a little bit of that yang, that outward, and then going more yang, getting after it. But then you got to go back to the yin. You look at the yin and yang symbol, that white has a little black dot, and that's like, having your defense still sharp about you while you're kicking somebody's ass or whatever. And, again, when it comes to suicide, that's the darkness, too much yin. I think that's what suicide is. It's going too much into the yin, going all the way in, and at the same time, that darkness is that pure potential. That's that darkness in space, right? And that there's a little bit of light there, right? So
it's like getting sucked into that darkness, huh?
Yeah. So, I dare say that us dealing with pain and connection with people that have committed suicide, make sure we do not get too sucked into that darkness and allow ourselves to go down that rabbit hole. Allow ourselves to mirror the energy, because relationships are like a mirror, and we got to be careful not mirroring. I know somebody that I've coached in regards to their own battles with thoughts of suicide, and just making sure you don't consume information or anything around it, And I guess now I remember what my thought was that I got lost on. Was growing up, I recognize now that the reason I think I had an interesting relationship with suicide, because I almost died when I was 2. That's what I was trying to remember. Gotta get some more sleep. My brain will be working better, And that's the truth. You sleep, man, your brain is fucking sharp and on fire. You don't sleep, sometimes you have brain farts like I just did there. And now I'm gonna stay on track. So, being that I got told I almost died when I was younger, I actually have recently been told it happened twice. So I almost died twice when I was younger, around 2 years old. And then, for whatever reason, death was something that was kind of always on my mind, right? Like, oh man, I got told I almost died. Like, man, I'm kind of lucky to be here. I almost died. But at the same time, I'm like, man, like, there's just, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's kind of like getting knocked out. But there's just this weird feeling, because, there's this weird unknown. Like, I don't remember almost dying. Like, I don't remember that trauma. I don't remember getting my surgery and getting cut open. Like, there's things in my life that I don't remember. It feels really fucking weird and kind of scary, to have that thought. Anyway, I moved forward in life. After 2, I was in, I believe, middle school. I think I was in middle school. And I wrote a paper on Japanese ritual suicide. And learning about the reasons and why that somebody would do it. and that the only reason they would do it was out of honor. And now, part of me is like, my younger self would always say, "Oh, it has to be only out of honor, right?" And now in the Japanese mentality, that would be like when they're at war and they're gonna get captured maybe by the enemy forces, they would commit suicide, so that way they wouldn't, be able to give up information to the enemy forces and potentially, have their brothers killed, because the samurai were servants, so they were there to serve. So if they had to serve and commit suicide, that's what they did. I think it's called Hattori, or I can't remember the exact name, but there's a couple different names for it. Anyway, and then also if a samurai did something dishonorable, maybe they did something dishonorable to the samurai, name, or to their individual clan, whether it be, rob, steal, whatever, rape, pillage, whatever, I don't know, whatever it may be, then they would actually, as punishment, they would, commit ritual suicide out of honor.
Damn.
Because they did not hold the integrity of their clan, right?
The Bushido Code.
Yeah, the Bushido Code, or whatever it is. And now again, I think this has its place. I think back in the samurai day, I think back in the warrior culture, I think if you're fighting in MMA and you're in the cage, yeah, it has a place to just be, that yin, to go into that darkness and to try to be so perfect that if you're not perfect, it's not even worth being here. But at the same time, I think we're at a different place in the world and in our lives that we all got to learn to not be so attached to being perfect, because that's what leads to most mental health issues. That's what leads to most depressive cycles. That's what leads to most anxiety, issues, is just this thought or need that we have to be perfect, that life or death is just based on perfection. And, it's not. And even,
I even think too, like social media and all that stuff freaking influences that.
Yeah.
All that shit.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we gotta be careful of, the social media things you follow. Are they portraying perfection or not? And like I said, the samurai code with suicide was about honor, and that to me, it's funny, as I was saying that, I'm realizing now that the people that are maybe committing suicide, they're actually feeling like, again, in their mind, it's honorable because they feel like they're making the world a better place. And that's something I didn't realize until just now. And that's something that's deep and hard to accept. But I'm here to tell you, everybody out there who's done that, you're making this world a little bit more challenging. You might be making it easier for yourself, but you make it a little bit more challenging for others. We can take on these challenges. Some of us are going to take on these challenges, and we're going to find the light, and we're going to not get sucked into the darkness. I know a lot of people, unfortunately, are. So may you have some time to feel the pain and heal, talk with people, create some rituals, and to continue to do it on a regular basis. Don't expect it to just be a one-time thing. I know there's, ceremony set up for Tim Lane and the passing, and then, there's funeral rituals and all kinds of things. But I think it's important for other people to have their own rituals. Like I have some pictures. They look like they fell over. But I have some pictures up here of some people that passed away. I took away the pictures from those funerals or those celebrations of life or whatever those ceremonies or rituals were around those people. Kind of took some things away. I really kind of wish I had something up there for my grandma, but she's in my soul. She's in my heart. I don't need to necessarily have anything up. But there are some other people up there that I learned a lot about in their passing that I kind of regret that I didn't learn before they passed,
It's crazy how it works like that, right? Like, so crazy. But at the same time, like, those services, like...
I think that's the gift of it all, but go ahead.
It helps you... I think, for me, it helps me move through it. And
yes, you have to.
And helps me, like, celebrate, where it's like, oh, they died, but... shit, this dude or this person fucking lived a fucking solid ass life. Like they did some shit, so or some stuff that so I could do this, or like, or now it's fueling me. So now I'm going to help continue on their legacy
For sure.
on what they've
and
done.
that's the yang, that's the fire, that's the out. That's what we have to honor and take with us as well, just as much as the yin. So life's about trying to find that balance. You see my symbol there, that's like my little love balance symbol. And making sure we stay in balance. When we're coaches and sort of leaders like Tim was, and like you are, and like I am, like a lot of people out there are, I feel like sometimes we do too much yang, right? And the yin and yang symbol in life, it has polarity, right? So when we stretch one way really hard, and we go so yang and put ourselves out there so fucking hard, unfortunately, the law of the universe and balance, that yin is coming someplace at some time. So whether you schedule your yin and take that time to get back in a healthy way, or whether life, hits you hard and forces you back in. Like for me, it was injuries and other things that forced me to go back in. So just be careful and really try to balance your energies. That's number 2 in the check 1, 2, 3, 4 system. And there's actually, you can look it up out there. If you're out there challenged or struggling, or coaches even want to look it up, it's a system I use, but there's a whole program, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, how to remove anxiety, depression, obesity, and addiction. Don't quote me on that specifically, but I think it's something along those lines. You can look it up. Check institute.com might have it, or just look it up in general. It might even be a free PDF somewhere. I can't remember exactly what it was that I found many moons ago. So check that out. That's number 2, is managing your yin and yang. Number 1 is having a dream or a goal. So make sure you have a dream or goal to work on. And that's what can be hard after, a fight career like myself or like Tim. So now it can be really hard for us to not have these crazy big dreams or goals. For me, I've just, my goal, my dream is to help more people stay on this planet, and to just create a happy, healthy family for myself. My real, helping other people, again, too much yang. My real goal for me, selfish ass goal, which is not completely selfish, is to, have a family, have a kid of my own, get married like Derrick, try to live out the dream, good old American dream one day. Right? Gotta do what you're supposed to do, goddammit. But, I did it my way. Most people say you gotta do it early in life, have the kids early, but I didn't want to do that. Growing up without a dad around, I'm not gonna lie, a part of me was like scared to have a kid. I'm like, fuck that, I don't want to have no kid. Growing up without a dad and shit, I'm not responsible, I'm not ready. I was a little too honest sometimes. But yeah, now that's my goal, what I'm working on. And I guess let's look at the 4 doctors for mental health. When it comes to the check system, the 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 1 is having the goal, the dream. 2, managing the yin and the yang energies. 3, I guess we'll go to 3 first. Then we'll go to the 4 doctors. Number 3 is you always have 3 choices. So if you're out there, struggling with mental health, or you're just healing and dealing with death, whatever you're going to do next, you always have 3 choices. Number 1, the most optimal decision. Trying to do the most optimal thing that is good for you and everybody on your team. I can assure you, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but I don't believe, I'm pretty sure suicide is not the most optimal thing for everybody. So try to remember that. If you're not careful, not doing the most optimal thing that's good for you and everybody on your dream team, it doesn't have to be good for everybody in the world, but at least everybody in your dream team. Just start with that, people that support you and love you. Number 2,